Stugotz here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love a good gummy. Whether I'm on the golf course or winding down after a long day of carrying the show on my back, all I need is one good gummy to help me totally relax. And now, thanks to my good friends at CBDMD, getting Delta 9 THC gummies shipped directly to your door is not only possible, it's easy and affordable. How about that? Every CBDMD Delta 9 gummy is packed with 10 milligrams of THC per gummy, and let me tell you, buddy, they work. CBDMD also has Delta 9 microdose capsules that feature 1 milligram of THC, so it's easy to enjoy them whenever, wherever. And listen, I know it's easy to get confused with all the different Deltas out there, but Delta 9 THC is the same good old-fashioned THC we've all known and loved for years. To learn more about Delta 9 and everything else CBDMD has to offer, just head to cbdmd.com/Dan. Once again, that's cbdmd.com/Dan for information, education, and the best damn gummies you've ever had. Must be 21 years or older to purchase Delta 9.
Welcome to the Big Suey, presented by DraftKings.
Why are you listening to this show?
The podcast that seems very similar to the other Dan Le Batard podcast.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologize for that.
In fact, the only difference seems to be this imaging.
I have been tempted in restaurants just walking past tables to grab somebody's fries that if they're just there. That hasn't happened to you guys?
I've done it.
And now, here's the marching man to nowhere, Fat Face, and the habitual liar.
Stugotz has got to get out of here. We will get to the Deshaun Watson news in a moment. He gets 6 games. That is a light penalty. It is lighter by legions than what Calvin Ridley got for a $1,500 parlay. It's going to be hard to avoid that comparison. We will also get to the passing of Bill Russell in a moment. And we have to get to Pat McAfee continuing to do things in wrestling that I'm startled by, because jumping off the top rope, losing your balance at SummerSlam, and doing a backflip outside the ring is not something I had being done by somebody who's not a professional wrestler. And it's fairly amazing to watch these things. But yes, I mean, he was.
I had the losing the balance part done by a non-professional wrestler, to be fair.
Oh, but then correcting it.
Yeah, he got helped out a lot by the guy that he was wrestling. It's an overlooked thing, how much the person you're attacking, air quotes, is there to protect you.
Well, bum-ass Corbin was greeted by McAfee hiring a male choir to ruin his introduction, singing Bum-ass Corbin. Bum-ass Corbin exists, as far as I can tell, to make McAfee a star, all of him.
Yeah, I mean, they're strapping a rocket to Pat McAfee. He's had clean wins over guys of repute in professional wrestling. No, they're really building him up to be an attraction over there.
To go from losing your balance, though, to
hell of a recovery,
to backflipping out of the ring and hitting your bum-ass Corbin, hitting him when he's standing outside the ring, still an unbelievable recovery, given that I wouldn't have the courage to step into any of that. I wouldn't want to be seen doing that in front of that many people.
Oh, that goes almost without saying. His first match against Theory at WrestleMania, well, that wasn't his first match, but main card match, was a little bit more fluid than this one. It was really tempting fate a couple times. Wrestling gods were on his side, but he is absolutely a star. If you look at the balance of their roster right now, you can make an argument that he's one of the more over babyface attractions in that company. I could see him actually getting a proper babyface run.
How many of those guys do they have on their roster? Because there's Logan Paul, who they like, guys that they have, like, they brought in for more of their audience, right? They're trying to get bigger audiences by bringing in people with audiences.
Good. He's also better than I thought.
He was phenomenal.
He seems like, I mean, he's a little younger than Pat McAfee, so I could see him, like, they're both legitimately good at this.
I think the celebrity element is something that Vince McMahon always kind of gravitated to. They're probably, WWE as it is presently constituted isn't the same if it wasn't for bringing in Mr. T and Cyndi Lauper and having that cross appeal. But now they kind of found that if we make these people, they saw it with Bad Bunny at WrestleMania, went incredibly well. they're really touting their social media metrics. If you want to really get into what that means, they're just trying to hype up some numbers for a possible sale. They've realized that getting guys like Logan Paul and Pat McAfee and Bad Bunny involved, if they can go in the ring and be parts that you can build a storyline around, actually brings a lot to the company. And Nick Khan probably came aboard and accentuated something that was always a fixture of WWE, but it's going very well for them.
Dwight Howard also thinking about taking it up and going to tryouts after his career.
And then you have the Ric Flair match.
We'll
I
get
love
to that
that.
in a second.
I love that. Flair match was way better than anything I saw in WWE over the weekend.
That's not true.
No.
You don't need to be doing flips, almost losing your balance on the top
He
rope
almost
to
had a
tell a
heart
good
attack.
story.
He almost had a heart attack.
He was just selling it.
Eye jab.
I love that he went from
Dirtiest player in the game.
73
Boom, still
years
got
old,
it. Eye
went
poke.
from faking a heart attack
He's a terrible actor.
front of
It's
his
clearly
children.
a fake heart attack.
No, man. I was worried. I was worried. Did you see the quotes before the match? He's like, well, no doctors have told me not to do it. He's just like, don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to his personal health. He was wearing it as a badge of honor that he got his BPM up to like 150.
He was winded by the time he got to the ring.
Yeah.
I saw him a radioactive shade of red in a photograph tying his shoes before the match.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot.
At one point, he just laid down on the mat in the corner for like 5 straight minutes while his tag team guy was wrestling. He's just laying there on his back. I'm like, is he dead?
I loved that match. I love the story that it told. However, both the shoulders were down. That's a double pin.
That's what I was
It's a
saying.
double pin. Rick didn't win that match. Jared has a case.
Dan, tying the shoes is a tricky game. It is. I mean, the blood starts rushing to your head. It makes you look a lot more exhausted than you actually are. It's a very dangerous, tricky game, especially if you're our age and you bend over to do it.
come on.
You need I'm telling you, you need a good chair to put your foot on, and then you tie the shoes. But bending down to do it, you look like a mess afterwards.
Okay, but that's 70s and 80s. That's Kim Bokamper's
for me
age.
right now.
That's not. Come on, Stugotz. We'll do weekend observations in a second, but again, I want to point out to the audience, this is the thing that happened. Ric Flair had his last match. You can make the argument, maybe greatest wrestler ever. He faked a heart attack in front of his family that had to be legitimately worried that he actually wanted to die in the ring and was okay dying in the ring if that was the result. A man who's been hit by lightning multiple times. Faked a heart attack in front of his family and then went eye gouge right out of it. Eye poke right out of it. And then this is another thing that may have escaped people's attention. Wrestled the entire match in a shirt.
Yeah, I mean,
Really?
he did that for
2
you.
shirts, I think.
He did that for you.
Sad.
Yeah, you don't want to. He's 73 years old. He understands the aesthetics.
Only 73, huh? Simultaneously, like, wow, he's lived to 73, and only 73.
There was one shot after he won where he lifted his arms. It was such a bad angle for his
believe
underarms.
we're doing
They
this.
cut away from it so fast.
Guys.
You could tell in the truck, they're like, no, cut away. Rather, other angle.
He's a 73-year-old man
Well,
that's been in an airplane accident and wrestling damn near his entire life and has a pacemaker. I've never seen someone at that
Mike,
age with a pacemaker.
Why the hell is he wrestling
Because
then?
he's a goat, man, and he's addicted to it. And this is probably just kicking off a last match tour.
There was like he did some of his shtick, but like he didn't hardly do any woos. He
was tired, man. He's old. He has a pacemaker. It seems like a difficult thing to do.
You say it's 73, and he was wearing the shirt because when he wasn't wearing the shirt, he was doing a lot of steroids, and that doesn't hold up at 73.
Whoa. How dare you probably be right about a reckless accusation about professional wrestling in the 70s, 80s, and 90s.
Time now for Stugotz's weekend observations.
It is time for Stugotz to share his game notes. No one in the media will tell you what happened better than my boy Stu.
Weekend observations. What happened there? I mean, the voice was holding up so well. I'm in much better weather. Lake Placid, Dan, you know where I am. Lake Placid, home of the greatest goal in the history of American hockey. How about that?
That's good quality phlegm he's got going right now, though. That
Yeah, it
phlegm
is.
sounds
Feels
great.
good. Yeah. Anyway, weekend observations brought to you by Miller Lite. Great taste. 96 calories. Available for delivery. Dan, you can smell it in the eroding air that is 25 degrees warmer in most places than it should be this time of year. It's so close, we can almost touch it. Franchise quarterbacks are fighting with anyone who dares lay a hand on that red jersey. Tensions are running high. Wide receivers are having fun. The tackling sleds are out. So are the jugs machines. And Dan, just like that,
Yep.
football
Yep.
is back. Speaking of back, Jacob DeGrom, the DeGrominator. Derek Jeter. My friends insult me way worse than that. I stand with Alex. Jeets, the captain, A-Rod. Dan, you know what the C in the captain stands for?
I do not.
Sensitive. The Cardinals. What happened there? The Cardinals took out the study clause in Kyler Murray's contract. You, of course, know what that means, right, Dan?
They backed down.
The Cardinals tried to do the impossible. Put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Oh, wow.
It can't be done, Dan.
Cannot be done. You're right.
No one's ever done it.
No one has ever done it. Put it on the poll, Chris. Has anyone ever actually gotten the toothpaste back in the tube?
Death, taxes, and Daryl Morey being accused of tampering. The Jags cut a kicker who hit an innocent bystander with an errant field goal. Number one, that's so Jacksonville. Number two, if you hit someone from Jacksonville with an errant kick, you shouldn't be cut. You should be signed to a lifetime contract. And number three, no one in Jacksonville is innocent. Corrigan family, Under Armour, and Inside Lacrosse. Oh, I got something for you.
What happened?
How do you have a? What happened there, Dan?
What did happen there? Before you get to the lacrosse thing, I skipped over the PJ Tucker thing. The idea of losing draft picks and getting fined money because you were in a giant zeal to overpay a 40-year-old PJ Tucker at the end of that contract.
He's a guy, though, Dan.
I like him. I just think it's funny to get penalized like that. Harden had to rework his contract. Like, there's all sorts of things that had to happen in order to get the 40th year of PJ Tucker's defense.
That's what you do, Dan, for picks, for toughness, for championship DNA. That's what you do anything for it. Seriously. Corrigan family, Under Armour, Inside Lacrosse. How do you have a 2022 All-American game that has a team from the North playing a team from the South, and 39 of the 44 players are from Maryland or north of Maryland? When the number one team in the country the last 2 years, according to you, resides in South Florida. Throw the game, my ass.
I mean, this is oddly personal. Mike,
Dan, how do you do that? I have the number one team in the country who haven't lost a game in 2 years. There's a 2022 All-American game, and you have a North-South team. And all the girls who are playing on the South team are from the North. And the number one team in the country is from South Florida. That's disrespectful to South Florida lacrosse, is it not?
To you, and it's not, you're not wrong, and it's regionally wrong, but I just don't understand why it's so high in the weekend observation.
We were worried about explaining traffic circles earlier.
Yeah. I mean, July, August, that's why it's so high, Dan. The Cardinals took out the study clause in Kyler Murray's contract. Unfortunately for us, I already did that one.
What happened?
Well, Stugotz, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Mike, you got it.
What just happened? Did your eyes go back to the top, or do you have that sandwiched around your lacrosse pitching?
I can tell you what happened. I had it, I had the lacrosse observation, and then you went back to Daryl Morey, and I scrolled back up to Daryl Morey, and I forgot to scroll back down.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what happened there.
He had to have his observation as a frame of reference for the conversation.
Yeah.
It's one of the many things lost, Stugotz, when you don't have the papers in front of you that we can just hand you.
Yeah, that's a good point. It wasn't turning 50 over the weekend that made me feel old. It was playing pickleball. Oh, boy.
Is that why you wrote in the chat, I think there might be a Pilates class starting soon?
I am sitting in a gym right now, right next to an indoor pool, Lake Placid, New York, home of the greatest goal in the history of American hockey, and hockey in general, to be honest with you. And I believe I'm in a Pilates studio, and 3 people have walked in and then walked right back out. So I don't know what I'm doing here.
You're broadcasting from a Pilates studio? I thought that was Abby behind you. They're just random.
That makes 2 of us that don't know what you're doing there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Zach Taylor said Joe Burrow will be back when he's ready. August. He said it in July. I want to call it July. He actually said it in July. Dan, can I get a ruling on that?
I mean, you did make the observation in July. It was a headline from July. Today is August. So yes, you can make it July.
Right. You thought Abby was coming for a Pilates class?
I don't know
Abby?
where you are or what you're doing, Stugotz. I just know I showed up today and you were in Lake Placid. I don't know where. Why are you at a Pilates studio? Is that where the audio's the best?
Yes, it's quiet here. It's private. It's very nice.
But it's not private. There are 3 people.
It was. I mean, until these Pilates people walked in, getting in my way.
What do they make? What do they make of their
I love
situation?
Pilates.
Pilates is great, but I don't want Stugotz broadcasting his takes on Kyler Murray while I'm doing them.
Disagree.
Tim Anderson, 3 games for bumping an ump. Josh Donaldson, 1 game for racist comments directed at Tim Anderson. Huh? Still waiting for confirmation from my sources, but feeling pretty good about reporting that on the first day of Dolphins training camp, Tua overthrew Tyreek Hill on purpose. People ripping the Cardinals over the study clause for Kyler Murray. Do me a favor. While you're at it, rip Kyler Murray. He's the one who agreed to it. Put his name on it. Signed it. Now, what is going on here? Listen, the Cardinals did the right thing. They took it out, Dan, but Kyler Murray agreed to that thing.
Yes.
Thanks.
It was dumb all around. Yes, dumb for everybody.
Congratulations to Gardner Minshew, who was featured on the cover of this week's edition of July. Minshew Mania.
That was great, though. He's
I don't care about Minshew anymore. He's not even the starting quarterback.
He's living in a prison bus outside the gym, and he's showering inside the gym for 5 months. That's not fun. Nothing interesting about that to you? That he's and it's not even a big prison bus. 5 months he lived in a prison bus. An NFL quarterback lived in a prison bus outside of a gym in Bonita Springs. Not interesting?
No.
With like orange couch, he did the interior. Look at Mike Ryan. Mike Ryan is dreaming of a day before kids and responsibilities when he could live like that and wear jorts and take a picture on the top of it, outside the gym for ESPN.com.
Had me at Bonita Springs.
It's a prison bus. An NFL quarterback lived for 5 months in a prison bus.
I feel like that would stick out in Bonita Springs.
Calling him an NFL quarterback.
He's got like 47 touchdown passes and 12 interceptions.
Give me a break.
Okay.
He'll be starting where? Tell me where Gardner Minshew is going to be starting this season. Go ahead.
I don't have any complaints about Gardner Minshew. 6th-round pick. I've enjoyed his entire career. When I was introduced,
congratulated him. He's on the cover of this week's edition of July. I mean, what else? Put that up in September. See how it goes. I mean, No one cares. Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. I say that as a guy who is currently doing his job right next to a gym and indoor swimming pool and inside a Pilates class. I mean, Will Smith, Chris Rock, the whole thing. Enough.
Right?
Enough.
I mean, I can't get enough. I can't.
Oh, shit. You're the problem.
Chris Rock has got to be making material out of this that he only disperses in his stand-up for the rest of the time. Use it as a ticket sale. Never commented on it. Never comment on it except in your routine so that people have to pay for it.
Dan, the effing Ferrari stands for it up for Charles Leclerc every week. You didn't know that, did you?
Well, I mispronounced his name that way last week, and Frenchie corrected me.
Who's Frenchie?
Bill Russell. Rest in peace, sir. You are firmly and forever entrenched in my top 5 winners of all time. Top 5 winners of all time.
Oh, here we go. Can you believe that one city has 2 of them in 2 different sports? That's crazy.
Well, it's according to your top 5.
Well, I bet you it's your top 5 too.
I think you're right. Damn it. Number 5, Mike Garuzioni. And I'm not just saying that, Dan,
Yes, you
because
are.
I am right
Yes,
down the
you are.
street from the hockey arena where he scored the most famous goal in the history of
That
hockey
is why
that
you're
won the
saying
United
it.
States a gold,
It's the only
even
reason.
though it wasn't a gold.
It is the only reason you're saying it, and it wasn't
They
the
had to
gold
beat
medal
Finland
goal.
in the finals.
Yes.
Number 4, Pat Summitt. Number 3, Tom Brady. Number 2, Bill Russell.
There it is.
And number 1,
It's-
care to guess, Dan?
I have no idea. Can't even imagine who this would be.
Michael Jordan. He won like 8 less championships than Bill Russell.
I love that you are somebody who will criticize anybody. You'll find the way to criticize anybody, and you'll have a different take just to zig. And yet here you have the most common opinion in the world. Michael Jordan is the best.
But no one has Mike Garuzioni in their top 5.
That's correct.
Nobody.
That's
Thank you.
correct.
Yep, exactly. Apologies to Yogi Berra, by the way. And watch out for the Metropolitans. Aaron Judge. What the hell? Speaking of hell, Dano. Art Briles. Dan, those are the weekend observations.
Enjoy the Pilates.
I'm going to watch my daughter play lacrosse, man. I'm excited. By the way, I do an hour. I get to expense this on you, right? That's good?
See you later.
See you, buddy. Stugotz here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I love a good gummy. Whether I'm on the golf course or winding down after a long day of carrying the show on my back, all I need is one good gummy to help me totally relax. And now, thanks to my good friends at CBDMD, getting Delta 9 THC gummies shipped directly to your door is not only possible, it's easy and affordable. How about that? Every CBDMD Delta 9 gummy is packed with 10 milligrams of THC per gummy, and let me tell you, buddy, they work. CBDMD also has Delta 9 microdose capsules that feature 1 milligram of THC, so it's easy to enjoy them whenever, wherever. And listen, I know it's easy to get confused with all the different Deltas out there, but Delta 9 THC is the same good old-fashioned THC we've all known and loved for years. To learn more about Delta 9 and everything else CBDMD has to offer, just head to cbdmd.com/Dan. Once again, that's cbdmd.com/Dan for information, education, and the best damn gummies you've ever had. Must be 21 years or older to purchase Delta 9.
Dan Le Batard.
You keep mentioning Lou Harris and Lou Williams and Montreal Harris. You keep mentioning Harold, excuse me.
Stugotz.
Nick, thank you so much for being on with us. Really enjoy your work.
Oh, thanks for having me. Have a great day.
This is the Dan Le Batard Show with the Stugotz.
We are presented by DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code DAN for a special offer when you sign up. That's code DAN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Just watching me scarf down my oatmeal, Howard.
That was tremendous right there. The only downside was now knowing that it was oatmeal.
Ah, I love oatmeal.
Ugh.
What else?
Do you want to hear something horrible about me?
Yes, tell me.
Yeah, there are two aromas that actually make me vomit just by smelling them. One is bleach and the second is oatmeal.
Really?
It's unreal.
Bleach is a delightful smell.
Ugh.
I enjoy the smell of bleach.
Bleach
Like
is
if
the
I walk
smell
into
of
like
your
a restaurant or
brain
something
cells
and they
fizzling away.
just did the floors, I'm gone.
Wow.
I think you actively smelling bleach honestly tells me so much.
I didn't say I never
explains
seek out
so much.
No. I never seek it out. I never wake up and say, you know what, let me smell some bleach. I'm just saying.
Note the disclaimer.
If it enters into my nose, I'm like,
I think you like bleach because you just associate it with clean.
Right.
You're associating something here.
Ooh,
is
my
not
cleaning
as,
people were here today.
as dirty as it used to be.
I love it.
But usually it's scented. It's fabuloso. It's something. It's not. It's look. You laugh. Howard, let's just start there. He never knows when we're airing, so we never know when we're airing. There are some things in sports that we want to talk to you about to get some history, some perspective. But the news is breaking right now. Before we talk about Bill Russell, that Deshaun Watson has gotten 6 games and. As skeptical as I am in general of that industry and investigation, and as awful as this seems, because 6 games seems awfully light for the scandal and shame of dry humping tables and just the awful that he has done to women, 6 games seems amazing, does it not?
Well, as we would say in Boston, pardon the laughter, right? I mean, seriously, the reason why... You knew this was coming yesterday. When you saw that release by the Players Association, essentially that was their way of saying, boy, we got a great deal and we're all going to abide by it. It was, in some ways, it was a humble brag before the announcement. We got away. And I couldn't believe that statement because you would have never gotten that statement if he had gotten 2 years. You would have never gotten that statement if he had gotten anything close to what any of us would consider to be justice. And I think that there are 2 things about this that really need to be examined. And one is obviously, how this went down. But the second is the structure of Deshaun Watson's contract. Because that contract was absolutely backloaded away from whatever suspension he was going to get.
$1 million for the first year is something absurd, right?
Something absurd. I mean, and this is in some ways, this is in some ways one of the most egregious things you're going to see in terms of the NFL and the players, and in some ways even the Players Association. In a lot of ways, just saying, we're untouchable. I mean, if you can't get me on this, you can't get me on anything.
Let's talk about the mechanics of this. And I'd also like to talk about how women are supposed to feel when $1,500 of parlay bet by Calvin Ridley, the integrity of the league.
Well, that's the troll. Exactly.
And the league can make its argument about on-field product and integrity. And yes, we would never say so publicly, but the integrity of our games does matter more than women. We can't frame it that way, but we just gave the punishments that would indicate it. But let's talk about the mechanics of the machine here instead of whether or not the penalty was stiff enough. You have an independent investigator with much, much time, more time invested in finding the facts around this than we are. You have a players association that must fight for its players because Roger Goodell has been heavy-handed of getting into this business where he gets to apply larger than the law punishments because he's making it up as he goes along. The system just conspired to take some of that power away from Roger Goodell over the bodies of women. But the Players Association has to make the argument on behalf of Deshaun Watson, has to defend its client, does it not?
And it should, absolutely. You have to do that. I mean, it's their job to do that. And it's also the job of the independent arbiter to make whatever conclusion she chose to. So we need more information on that. When that verdict comes down, when that decision comes down, we'll find out exactly what all that went into it. And maybe at the end of the day, it gets so muddy that this was the way to go and that this is how it works. On its face, however, you do have to wonder, on the one hand, there's no question this is, in a very bizarre way, a long-sought and overdue victory for the Players Association because of the way Roger Goodell could simply be the untouchable judge, jury, and executioner, the law and order commissioner, whatever other trope you want to come up with, because that's what he's been for the last 12 years. And so, so there's that. But on the other hand, you do have to come up with, there's going to be at some point a question that they can't answer, which is how do you look people in the eyes and make sense of this to them, unless something spectacular happens and you get a bunch of recantations or something, which I don't see.
I'm wondering, though, Howard, because it begs the question. It does. Like, what does she know that we don't? What does the arbiter, what information does she have? I think most reasonable people listening to this do not believe that many women came forth because there's nothing here. And if Roethlisberger gets, 6 games or whatever it was, 8 games that he then negotiates down to a lower penalty, what am I to make of 6 games?
Well, what you can make of it, it's not that different from Cosby, who went to jail and then suddenly wasn't in jail anymore. I mean, there's all kinds of different things you can make from it. One of the things you can absolutely make from it is the argument that his off-field and his on-field, the same Calvin Ridley argument, that the two are not connected, and that he went through a legal process. And by making those settlements, that the two are really not connected. That, okay, you tell us whenever something goes down in the league, you say, we're going to let the law follow its course. Okay, so we're going to make a line here. We're going to separate the two. And in separating the two, he made his settlements. Whatever machinations went through the legal process, that's done. And now what does this actually have to do with football? And maybe that's where she's coming from. I'm looking forward to finding out more, but absolutely, you're right. If you're going to make the argument, essentially it's a morals clause, right? If you're going to make the argument.
And everyone is incentivized here, Howard. Everyone. In the climate of the day, everyone is incentivized to overpunish here. For them to come off as a league after all of this talk as light on this, what does the arbitrator know? She's spent more time. She's an independent, and she has spent more time with this than all of us. I mean, maybe I can assume most cynically, the league just wants in one of its quarterbacks on the field. Rich people negotiated for a long time to get to here, all of whom have a lot more information than we do on this because they're going through the details that aren't just the voices of the women, that have Deshaun Watson's voice in them, which we have not heard very much of. What's known here? I can't say it's unfair until I know what it is that she's actually ruling on. What does she have that I don't know?
Yeah, that's right. And what is she basing it on? Because maybe what this is all being based on is that, okay, there is an on-field line and an off-field line. And that maybe what's actually taking place right now is the curbing of Goodell's power to affect people's lives off of the field.
This is what I'm asking you. I think this ruling affects Goodell's do it however he wants, velvet, or iron 100%. Fist.
This is a huge victory for the Players Association.
But it's also a defeat for what Goodell rode to his salary of the present day, which is I will over-punish these criminals. My league will not be run by off-field malfeasance. Now they take it out of his hands. This takes the power out of Goodell's hands and puts it in Deshaun's?
Well, it takes the power out of his hands and puts it into maybe it puts it in a place where Goodell's not going to be in this job that much longer anyway. Maybe what it does is it simply creates the new precedent that anything that happens off the field, that the league stays out of your business. What? And that, do you have that whole, the NFL is a right, not a privilege type of stuff? Maybe they're punting. And punting in a way that Major League Baseball is not, because Trevor Bauer has not been on the field. We haven't seen him, and this is going in the second year now.
What I
Third
think
year.
We're forgetting, though, is that, like, in a lot of ways, the NFL's own reputation works against these women, even despite this new collectively bargained arbitrator agreement. Like, if you're a woman who's accused Deshaun Watson of something, and like, say you've filed a civil lawsuit, you may not have been part of this investigation. You may not have wanted to come forward and cooperate with the NFL for a number of reasons, because, as Jenny Vrentis reported last summer, two of the women that were part of the NFL investigation felt that the line of questioning was victim blaming. So there might be a reason for you not to want to participate with the NFL in the first place. And there also might be a reason why, for one reason or another, Sue Robinson decided she didn't want to hear certain testimony from certain people. We don't exactly know who she did hear from, and we can't assume that she knows more than we know. She might have actually considered less than what we've read in news reports that have been.
That seems not. Does that seem possible?
Yes, of course.
This isn't a jury. It's not like, I would assume she has all the information plus.
No, I think Florio reported last week that wasn't the case. Like, she didn't hear from every single woman who filed a civil suit. They heard from a subset of those women, and some women, I think, who may not have filed civil suits but were part of the criminal investigation. So we can't assume that she somehow uncovered some secret truth that, like, the public hasn't been let on to yet.
I also think it's worth noting that from a Roger Goodell standpoint, his role to play in this is still to be determined, because in the 3 days in the aftermath of the recommendation, either the player or the league can appeal, and that appeal is heard by Roger Goodell. So if the NFL decides to sit it out and not appeal, then one would presume that this is an era of, as you said, Howard, Roger Goodell saying, I'm washing my hands of this suspensions thing, and neutral arbitrator handles it, and we're going forward with it. But if they appeal and Roger Goodell hears it, then we're right back in the middle of, they could potentially overpunish. It's been reported by Dan Graziano of ESPN that in negotiations, the NFL was asking for a 12-game suspension and an $8 million fine. So if the NFL decides to appeal, then maybe we get there.
Howard, this is crazy, because from Ian Rappaport, under Watson's previous contract, he would have lost $11.5 million from a 6-game suspension. Now it's $345,000 based on the new salary structure. Are we really seeing, Howard, like, if you had to guess, we're going to get more information as the day develops, that Roger Goodell's entire reason for being the celebrity, powerful commissioner that Manfred followed, because Goodell gave him permission on, you can overpunish bigger than the law, that quietly the league lays down its sword on this one? As soon as it gets to women, they're like, they've had no problem overpunishing and defending the overpunishment. Goodell lost so much credibility on that bounty thing, pretending like he didn't know what the Saints were. You're going to tell me that this is where this one dies?
No, I'm going to say that, well, I mean, you could make an argument that they overpunished on Ray Rice or underpunished on Ray Rice, but he never played in the league again. I think what you're really looking at here is a victory for the Players Association that nobody ever thought coming. You have to remember that the Players Association has been chipping away at Roger Goodell's power for a decade now. And they've been going after him through the court to make sure that he couldn't be omnipotent the way he was early in his tenure. And so what you may end up seeing here is the NFL in some ways abdicating that role, that piece of their responsibility. Now, obviously, if something goes wild, if you have something else, I get your point. You know, your point is, well, what could be more wild than this? What could happen out there that doesn't deserve the sort of attention that we're getting here? And actually, the guy that I go back to on this, Dan, is Kaepernick, because the argument that the Players Association was making on Kaepernick was what he's doing is not actually taking place on the field, therefore you cannot punish him. If you're using that as a baseline, then all this off-field stuff that the players are going through, as long as it doesn't really affect their job, you're going to get more and more nominal suspensions. And now you can make an argument that runs counter to what we've seen over the past 12 years, where Goodell is simply the guy who lays down the law and then you get punished. Or you can say, hey, it's about time that his power is finally being eroded.
I just think it's super interesting symbolically that you go from laying down the law to laying down your sword when he never should have been in this business. He did it for image reasons, and everyone profited off of it, even though he was ill-equipped, and it was wrong for him to be thinking that he could manage domestic abuse-related things better than the law could when the law isn't very good at it either.
Well, and that the league itself was going to be the arbiter of moral conduct. It was like, why are we looking to Roger Goodell for this stuff? And so there's no doubt that this is a huge loss for, I mean, it certainly doesn't incentivize anyone to talk. Look at what's happening with the Washington football team commanders right now. I mean, the message being sent across the board is, if you're a woman, do not get involved with the National Football League.
Howard, Watson wins. Like everyone else loses here. I understand. It's weird to say, right?
Players Association didn't lose. They won because they finally beat Roger Goodell on something that is a pretty titanic victory for them in terms of expecting that your guy was going to get a year and everybody gearing up that he was not even going to be on the field. He'll be on the field before Thanksgiving.
They game the system, though. It's one division game that he's missing. The lawyers and everyone who got involved, it's weird to say, right? Because Watson does get the shame to his name, and this will cost Watson because those attorneys are expensive. But good God, did they earn it? They manipulated the whole thing, Howard. I cannot believe, so much so that I'm asking where's more information. I can't believe that after all of that, it's not just 6 games, but it's where you see Roger Goodell's iron fist come undone.
Yeah, and where you're also going to see the collusion between the players and the Browns. The Browns need him on the field as well. I mean, all of this is dirty. I mean, let's just put that out front.
Let's talk about something that we wanted to talk about before this news broke, and the news cycle is always changing, and we have a way of skipping past excellence in these mediums to argue and critique and debate stuff in sports. But Bill Russell received universal applause by way of eulogy, passing at the age of 88. First and foremost, for the people who do not know, Bill Russell as icon. Tell us about him.
Well, I mean, there's no way to talk about Bill Russell. I mean, everything we talk about in these sort of reductive debates is always about winning. It's always about who did what. And what I always found fascinating about Russ was, as time went on, the number of ways people found a way to diminish their own arguments. They keep saying that winning is everything. You always hear Michael Jordan say, well, 6 is better than 5. Well, Russell's got 11 titles. 11 titles in 13 years. Not only does he have 11 titles in 13 years, but he's got a 56-game winning streak in college and wins the Olympic medal in Melbourne as well. I mean, everything about him was winning. 11
titles, 10 more than the city of Atlanta.
And on top of that the man was 21-0 in winner-take-all games. And then you listen to people talk about this, and then they'll say, oh, well, there was only 8 teams in the league, and they'll find different ways to mitigate. Oh, well, the players were, J.J. Redick, oh, well, guys back then couldn't play with guys today. The man won 11 championships. He won 8 in a row. He's the first black coach in the history of American modern sports, and then won 2 titles as a coach, as a player coach.
Winner, yes, but as icon, is winner the first place you go? Because with him, I can't help, Howard, with him, the photograph of Ali and Jim Brown and Kareem and those guys when it was really hard to be them.
As the first place, of course, as a Bostonian, the first place I go is the Celtics, because he was the guy who loomed over that whole city. He was the guy who loomed over that whole city in 2 ways. The first was he was the man. I mean, as a player, there's no getting around the fact that everybody else that you talked about, whether you talked about Bob Cousy or Red Auerbach, those guys were the beginnings of the Celtic dynasty, but neither one of them won a damn thing until Russell got there. They never even got into the finals. And so there's that. But then on top of that, there was Russell the man. And that's the piece of it where you really start to see when we talk about this black athletic heritage, when you talk about all of these guys, you know, whether it's Tommy Smith, John Carlos, Jim Brown, Ali, all of them, that Russell was the rock behind all of it. And in terms of, you know, he took this stuff as dignity goes, as a guy making sure he was in control of his own morality. And Bill Russell wouldn't sign an autograph. Why? Because he didn't want to be commodified. Bill Russell, if you wanted to celebrate him, he might say yes, he might say no. Bill Russell didn't show up to his own Hall of Fame induction. Bill Russell, the Celtics win the championship in '69. He doesn't go to the parade. He's the coach. And so here's a guy who really, really decided to do things on his terms. And the grief that he would have gotten and the amount of advice that he had always gotten from people saying, oh, just let it go. Why are you so hardcore on all of these things? Because it mattered. I'm not going to play this game.
Larger than life, his story, Howard, because it takes us through sports, and it is heartbreaking to me that Muhammad Ali would die and see in America in much the same place, that Jim Brown walks with a cane, that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, that these guys came through the civil rights 60s as icons, and him specifically, Howard, because I've heard you talk about this, he began part of the migration toward the modern day ghetto, correct? Like he was part. He was.
Yeah, actually, you know, it's funny you should say that because I was having dinner with Dave Winfield the other day, and he was talking about how things are as bad now as they were then.
Name drop. Everybody heard the name drop back there. I was having dinner with Dave Winfield. All of them reacted the same way. All of them. What happened, Mike? Give me honest thoughts to Howard.
Could have said you went to dinner.
Could have just said you went to dinner, but he needs the Dave Winfield context.
It's the Dave Winfield piece of it. Okay, how about this? I was talking to Dave Winfield. There was no food involved. I was just talking to Dave Winfield.
If you went to dinner with Dave Winfield, it was either awesome or terrible. There was no in between.
Well, you know what though? I'm gonna say something that's just gonna lower my cred worse than my hamstrings, which by the way are feeling better now. Thank you all for that.
Impossible.
And all the laughs that you guys got at the expense of my pain. You know, all right.
Have you ever heard of another human being who has blown out both hamstrings?
It's never happened. The only thing close was when Carson Wentz had to wear 2 walking boots because he turned both ankles. It's the only comp in human history that I have.
You've worked in sports for a long time. Have you ever encountered anyone hobbled by 2 torn hamstrings?
It is your legacy.
I feel every time he comes on, he has to answer for this. I feel terrible.
All I'm going to say is what makes me feel even worse on this is that those guys are cigar smokers and I'm not, and I just have no game.
Oh, smoking a cigar with Dave Winfield. You could have been smoking a cigar with Dave Winfield.
Couldn't do it.
What was he telling you though about, because he grew up in Louisiana, Russell did, not Dave Winfield. And
yes, well, getting back to this, what I was going to say was that as part of that generation, he was saying that where we are right now makes it all sort of feel like, what was it all for? And when you look at somebody like Russell, who every single step in his career, when you talk about celebrating Bill Russell's career, you cannot separate celebrating that career from everything that he went through. The reason why he's in Oakland, you talk about, oh man, look at that unbelievable, he starts the migration, he and his generation, but they only go there because of all the grief they've got to deal with in Louisiana. You talk about the great teams in McClymonds High School, that him and Frank Robinson and Vada Pinson and Kurt Flood were all on the same, all classmates. Yeah, but they were classmates at McClymonds because black people weren't allowed to live in any other part of the city. He's this icon in Boston, but the reason why he's an icon in Boston is because St. Louis was so racist, they drafted him and traded him because they didn't want a black player to be the face of the franchise. So they trade him for Ed McCauley and Cliff Hagan and let Bob Pettit still be the star. So all of these things are not lost on him. So the thing about Russell that I always found most amazing was that the fans wanted to celebrate him on their terms, and he was like, no, you have to understand mine. And if that makes me a jerk, it makes me a jerk. But you got to see this from the way that I see it, and sometimes I'm going to play along, and sometimes I'm not. I mean, Bob Cousy, who was the superstar in Boston, even though J.J. Redick loves to clown him for some reason, he's the superstar in the league. And, he had to admit that Russell was the better player, even though he was the guy getting all the shine and getting the ski trips and getting the endorsements and everything else. And so now here's Bob Cousy, 93 years old. If you read Gary Pomerantz's amazing book, The Last Pass, he's trying to reconcile with Russell as a 90-year-old, writes Bill Russell a letter saying, trying to talk about the 60s and how the times were and how he should have been better. And Russell didn't even play along, didn't even respond to the letter. Why? Because Russell wasn't the one who was trapped. Cousy's the one who was trapped. So he's like, hey, I'm free. You guys can deal with this any way that you want. And that was the sort of thing about Russell that I found so amazing. Everybody else called him bitter, but he did stuff on his terms and left it to everybody else. You need to figure out why you acted the way you acted, and you guys need to reconcile your own behaviors. And maybe you'll make a statue of me, or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll see me, maybe you won't. And if you notice, the last 12 years, he was actually really present. They named the MVP championship of the finals after him. And you saw him more often than you had, you saw him more in the last 15 years than you did in the previous 30.
You can't get bullied by the cigar aficionados. It's the easiest highfalutin thing to fake. You don't inhale, you just light it, you puff it.
Cowherd's a big faker on the cigar.
You can fake it, Howard. You just light the end. It's not like golf. It's not like caviar. It's not like drinking Fernet Branc neat. Yeah, right? You can absolutely do this.
Once you take like one or two hits, you can even let it go out. No one's noticing.
Yeah.
Really, no one's paying attention?
You just talk with your hands a lot. Before you know, an hour's pass and no one notices.
Point at someone with
actually,
it.
What you're really doing is you're ventilating.
Yes. You talk with your hands.
You're getting
and
all
you're brushing
of that
the smoke away from your face.
away from you.
Look, man, it's easy to fake. I've done it.
You really want to hammer home a point by pointing at them with the cigar.
Take a couple selfies, maybe put it at the corner of your mouth, go cha-cha-cha, the whole thing.
Do you feel, again with the hot cha-cha? Again with a hot cha-cha reference. I did not know that you had a Churchill.
She's got a Churchill in her locker. I had no idea. I'm learning so much about her over these last 2 weeks.
She knew French last week, and now we knew that she emerged with... Your face got fatter. You had some jowls. I saw jowls on your face. As you did your Winston Churchill. Getting back to the way that Boston treated him, because yes, you're right, Howard. He got a lot of jerk and arrogant or aloof and bitter, and I always thought, well, what happened to him? Like, I think some things happened to him that might make him react in a way that covers himself with barbed wire and tells people to go themselves every once in a while.
A little bit, and that's the thing, is that but in Black Boston, he was present. I mean, one of my favorite Bill Russell stories is when Pumpsie Green the Red Sox finally integrated in 1959, 14 years after Jackie Robinson is signed by the Dodgers. Pumpsie Green shows up in Boston, and who comes and picks him up in his gigantic 12-foot-long Cadillac, but Bill Russell, and drives him around Boston, shows him around the city. And Bill Russell was iconic in the black community. Now, and that's the thing, is that is the beauty of Russell, an incredibly complex guy. And this is what we do in sports, right? You win, we want you to celebrate our way, and he wasn't willing to play along that way.
How did Boston treat him?
Well, Boston treated him the same way they treated everybody back then, which is that there's a double standard in Boston. And Boston is no different than how they probably would have treated him in any other city, except for the fact that Boston just explodes with racism in very high-profile ways without balancing a whole lot of good news. And so that's why Boston gets what Boston gets. But the biggest thing that Boston struggled with was attendance. You win 8 straight championships and you can't draw. I mean, that's as indicting as anything.
I believe that he can say, the group was talking to me and saying you can't be like every other city with an occasional explosion of racism.
Yeah.
So they were doing a show for me personally in my ear. And I was thinking to myself, I think he can say that about most cities.
You can say that, 100% you can say it. Why? Because St. Louis, look at St. Louis. St. Louis is just as bad as Boston.
But they also explode with racism. So it's just not like any other city.
The biggest difference between
racism.
Boston, I mean, every time we talk about this, the biggest difference between Boston and every other place is that Boston's black community just wasn't big enough. And you look at the way Boston sells itself. Boston sells itself with Mark Wahlberg and sells itself with Lenny Clark and Jay Leno. And you would never even know that anybody black was from Boston because they don't claim you the way black people who are famous in New York City are claimed by New York City or Philadelphia or the rest of those cities, where if you're a great player, they want to celebrate you. People don't even know black people are even from that city, and that's one of the biggest things, that if there was more balance there, if they were actually proud of their black people, we wouldn't be having these conversations.
Howard, good talking to you. Thank you, sir.
Hey, man, we'll see y'all later. Thanks for the cigar talk, though. I needed that.
You can do this, Howard.
You can.
I believe in you.
You can.